to make sure that we are starting off right. This project here is not only something that spans city, state, federal government, it is something that is the baby of our Chief of Energy, Environment, and Open Space, Reverend Mariama Whitehammond, who I believe carries around a map that she will show to anyone about what the plans are for this. And the Reverend is off very shortly because we have our frog pond opening almost at the same time. So I want to make sure she opens us up first.
So it's really great to be here. This is my neighborhood. This is the place I love to be, and I've gone running around this area on the morning of my wedding. But it also is a place that means so much to so many in this community. And so we're just really grateful. As many of you know, the Environment Department has made many plans for what we need to do. And now is the time to begin enacting these plans. And so we're really thankful to Congressman Lynch, to the entire delegation for the support of the work that we need to do to make sure that this becomes a place that people come to and enjoy, and not a place that people are scared of because it's where the water flows into our neighborhoods. So we're really excited to work also with our partners at the state. This is an opportunity for the city and the state to come together and look at the land that we share and really think about how we make sure that our waterfront continues to be a source of joy, and that we think about how climate change is changing all of our cities, and work together to make sure that our neighborhoods are protected. So really thankful to have you here. The last time I was here, I think I was performing a wedding, so it's really great to be in this space. And I'll turn it back to our mayor to share her remarks.
Thank you so much. So really thrilled, in addition to the chief, to be joined here by our senators, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, Congressman Lynch, Council President Ed Flynn, State Representative David Beal, the Director of the Mass Water Resources Authority, Fred Lasky, Director of Climate Resilience for DCR at the state level, Director Sarah White, as well as Carol Sullivan from the Mary Ellen McCormick Tenant Task Force. You will hear from everyone shortly. Good morning, and I'm so excited to be here celebrating an incredible victory and important step forward for our city, our climate, and our communities. Thank you so much to our federal delegation for your leadership in meeting this moment and helping deliver much-needed resources for our urgent efforts for a Boston Green New Deal and the protection and opportunities that our communities deserve. We have a moment and a chance to make our city and our Commonwealth shining examples of climate resiliency. Thank you so much, especially Congressman Lynch, whose devotion to securing this investment in the House was instrumental in ultimately funding this project. And to our senators who have been stalwarts of a Green New Deal and of climate action. We've had the chance to go all around the city celebrating the various funds that they have secured, and so many have been at the intersection of racial justice, climate justice, economic justice, and we're so grateful for your partnership. This earmark represents the strongest partnership yet between our city and state when it comes to planning and designing a climate resilience project in Boston. We've worked at the state on all sorts of matters and plans in the past, but Moakley Park is the first climate resilience project heading to final design that involves city-state collaboration from the very beginning. For decades, this beautiful green space has connected Dorchester and South Boston, bringing together residents from across our city and state to play sports, relax, walk around the water, apparently get married as well. As one of Boston's largest waterfront parks, this space and the communities around it are especially vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And as a coastal city, we must stay focused on taking bold action to protect our waterfront and our environmental justice communities. The investment we're celebrating here today is just one of the ways in which we're doing that. These funds, totaling $2.2 million, will help us defend our neighborhoods against the consequences of a rapidly changing climate and open the door to the joyful moments of opportunity, relaxation, and community building that continue to happen here. This will help us build climate-resilient infrastructure in areas around Moakley Park and transform this green space into one that our communities deserve. It also protects the entire city from serious flooding. Moakley Park is on the front lines of rising sea levels, and without these measures, this would ultimately be the gateway to waters that could flood all the way into Roxbury. So as we continue to strive to make Boston the greenest and most family-friendly city in the country, we will continue to do so with our partners at the state and federal levels, and with the strength of our communities alongside and in front. I'm so thankful to our residents and community leaders who made their voices heard and helped shape the future of this critically important space. On behalf of the entire city of Boston, thank you for your role in making today's announcement possible and for empowering us to lead by example, not just for spaces that connect our communities, but also to protect our planet. And so now I'll turn it over to Congressman Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor, my colleagues in government, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and I did, City Council President Ed Flynn, Representative Beal, and I did see City Councilor Frank Baker, who actually represents this part of South Boston as well. So welcome, Frank, and he's been very active on these issues as well. So this is a great day, but it's just a beginning, right? I do want to explain how this is a local priority project. So many of you may remember years ago there was the bridge to nowhere, and Congress caught a lot of heat because the lack of wisdom around that project and the lack of local support, I think. So now we have a situation in Congress where we are required as members of Congress to go out into the neighborhoods, our towns and cities, and actually ask the people that we represent what they would like to see as a local priority in terms of sources or areas to be addressed by federal funding. And so this project was really the result of sitting down with the Mary Ellen McCormick Task Force. Carol Sullivan is here somewhere, and also families from the Ann Lynch homes at Old Colony, two very big public housing developments, deeply affordable public housing developments, to find out what they wanted. And there have been some occasions when this park has been flooded out, mostly during the winter, and it'll freeze over and provide a little bit of opportunity for some skating and things like that, but quite disorganized. And we could see that the impact of a major storm would not only threaten the park itself, which is a treasure, but also the homes that collectively, between federal government, state government, and city government, we've invested close to $750 million in these, and will do so in the years to come, in these two housing developments, eventually creating about 5,000 brand new units. So we need to protect that investment, but we also need to preserve an opportunity for people to enjoy the beach and enjoy the park as well. So like Reverend Hammond, I jog here most days that I'm home. And I'll be dressed very differently later on in the day, but I'll run along this stretch. And our friends at UMass have done a wonderful job in creating a greenway, basically, to to allow people to run out the back here and then back onto Moakley Boulevard and back into South Boston. So it's a real treasure. It's looking better. I do want to say that several weeks ago, running along the Sugar Bowl there, running along, and all of a sudden a small seal came up onto the beach in South Boston. So, and that's a result of the billions of dollars of investment that our federal partners have made in terms of cleaning up the water by virtue of the Deer Island water treatment facility. So those are proof positive that good things are happening here, and we have to make sure that all along the way we include the local community in the redesign of the thruway here and the improvements. I heard that eventually $250 million to redesign the park and improve this area, so we welcome that. But I do want to come back to the local community that really were the ones who spearheaded this effort. They're the ones who said, this is a priority for us, and we would like to see our homes and our neighborhood protected. So I give great credit to my friends, Senator Warren and Senator Markey, who championed this on the Senate. I also give great credit to my local city councilors, my state reps, and my senators for sitting down with the neighbors, because it was a competition of ideas, right? There were many proposed ideas for receiving federal funding. This is the one that won but it was a spirited debate. And there are others in the community who want their ideas funded at a later time as well. But we've got agreement on this. We've got consensus. But it came from a lot of hard work from our local officials, and I want to give them credit as well. So God bless you all for being here. This is a wonderful, wonderful day, but it's only the beginning. And I want to turn it over to Senator Warren for her remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. You know, I just want to start by saying a very special thank you to Mayor Wu, that we can be here with her, to Congressman Lynch, who really has pushed this forward, and to the best partner I could ever hope for in the United States Senate, and that is Ed Markey. We know that Moakley Park floods all too regularly, and climate change is making this flooding more frequent and more severe. This park is situated at a critical breach point that threatens the long-term vitality of South Boston, a frontline community that is home to thousands of people, that provides critical affordable housing at Mary Ellen McCormick and Old Colony. It is also home to important regional transportation infrastructure. A storm surge of 40 inches in this area would affect more than 35,000 people. As our climate changes, so must we. We must adapt to our changing environment, and we begin by making this park more resilient to protect our neighborhoods and to protect our city. The City of Boston's Climate Ready Boston program, and in particular the Resilient Moakley Park Connectors Project, is a key step forward in preparing and protecting our communities from the impacts of climate change. I was so glad to have the opportunity to partner on this project with Senator Markey and Congressman Lynch. Together we secured about $1.65 million from the federal government on this to help support climate resilience in Southie. And I am thrilled that we have the opportunity to partner up with a Green New Deal mayor who rolls up her sleeves every day to tackle climate change head on. This beautiful park is named after the late Congressman Joe Moakley, who represented, loved, and fought for Southie and for our nation. He was so eager to serve our country that he falsified his birth certificate so that he could enlist in the Navy at age 15. He was later elected to local, state, and federal offices where he served the public for nearly half a century. Joe dedicated his entire life to defending his country and his community. It is only fitting that the park that bears his name does the same. So I want to thank everyone who worked on this project and the members of the community who have put in such long hours to make sure that their voices are heard. Thanks also to the work done by the city and the local community, and with this federal contribution, we are prepared to undertake these climate resilience investments. So I look forward to being here again with all of you when this project is completed and we can all celebrate. In the meantime, let's get the work done. Thank you. And with that, I turn it over to my partner, Ed Markey.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Warren. And thank you all so much for being here. As Senator Warren said, she and I, we partnered in the Senate in order to ensure that this funding was included, and no higher priority. And no higher priority because Steve Lynch had made it a local priority. Local. And, you know, when Joe Moakley passed away 21 years ago, Steve Lynch was elected in a special election to replace the great Joe Moakley. And I was the dean of the delegation in the House at that time. And when I introduced Congressman Lynch to the House of Representatives on the floor on the day that he would be sworn in, I said that in South Boston, being the congressman is bigger than being president of the United States. And what we're seeing here today with Steve Lynch is this focus on South Boston, on Carson Beach, on Boston Harbor, on the Gulf of Maine, because that is the threatened body of water in the world that is eclipsed only by the Arctic in terms of the speed with which it is warming, and warming dangerously. And so it's natural that Congressman Lynch would focus on this to make sure that it is protected. And of course, doing so in partnership with our great mayor, the Green New Deal mayor of the world, Michelle Wu, as we continue to focus on these issues and ensure that the funding is there to protect this incredible natural wonder which God has granted to the great city of Boston. So I want to thank Ed Flynn, Fred Lasky, Sarah White, Carol Sullivan, Mariama White-Hammond, Allison Brezius, Frank Baker is here, Mike Flaherty, President of the City Council again, Ed Flynn, Representative David Beal, all here today. And as Steve Lynch said, almost within easy jogging distance is the Mary Ellen McCormick housing project, but over there with the Ann Lynch, named after the Congressman's mother, projects as well. And this money is meant to protect them, all of the tenants, all of the residents of that great part of South Boston. And the funding that we're talking about right now is part of nearly $140 million in direct federal spending that the Massachusetts Senate and congressional delegation has brought home for our Commonwealth. It's an important piece of our plan to ensure that all of our communities can withstand the growing impacts of the climate crisis. Moakley Park is one of the city's most utilized public recreation and open spaces, but it sits at a critical breach point that threatens the long-term vitality of this and nearby neighborhoods. The impacts nearby housing developments, the impacts nearby transportation. It impacts over 35,000 people when 40 inches of sea level rise during a 1% storm event, and we are going to be having 1% storm events here in the city of Boston. We can't combat climate change unless we center the needs of environmental justice in communities, and we can't center their needs unless we hear their voices. So a little over a week ago, I stood with Senator Warren and Congresswoman Presley and Mayor Wu and other members of the East Boston delegation to celebrate $2 million in congressionally directed spending for a climate-resilient Piers Park 2. Today we stand in South Boston to celebrate this neighborhood's efforts to create a climate-resilient Moakley Park. From East Boston to South Boston, our communities matter, and today we're in Moakley Park. But we won't let up until all of our communities, especially frontline environmental justice communities, have access to green space and are resilient against the most damaging impacts of climate change. In Moakley alone, 1,700 low-income families are at risk. Those turning to the nearby emergency shelters are at risk. Our transportation and stormwater infrastructure are at risk. And that's why projects like this one are so important. And part of the city's Climate Ready Boston program, this community-led project will ensure that critical pre-disaster mitigation efforts are made to close the flood entry pathway and to protect the residents. With the city's climate resiliency goals in mind, this park will undergo design and construction to revamp infrastructure and make park improvements required for a climate-resilient Moakley Park. Southie residents deserve a climate-resilient waterfront and park. They should not have to bear the immediate burden of the climate crisis. This is a bold vision, a bold Green New Deal vision for the city of Boston and for all of its residents, centering environmental justice at the heart of it. That's why we're here. That's why we're celebrating. We know we're in the crosshairs of climate change right here where we're standing in South Boston. This is the funding that will help to protect against the worst, most catastrophic effects. So thank you all so much for everything you're doing on this.
Now we will hear from our city and state delegation. We'll invite up first City Council President Ed Flynn, followed by Councilor Frank Baker, Councilor Michael Flaherty, and Rep. David Beal.
Thank you, Mayor Wu, for your leadership in bringing us together. And, you know, government is about working together. And this is exactly what we've seen today. City government under Mayor Wu, state government under Governor Baker, and the federal government under Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and especially Congressman Lynch, bringing us together to make sure the residents of Dorchester, the residents of South Boston, that this park is inclusive, that this ocean is inclusive for everybody. Across the street, Congressman Lynch mentioned, is Mary Ellen McCormick. Down the road is Ann Lynch at Old Colony. West 9th Street development is right across the street as well. And just a couple blocks down the road is West Broadway. And you don't have a more inclusive public housing residence than we have here in South Boston. And we're proud of that. But what we're proud about is also Congressman Lynch bringing us together to make sure that this area is inclusive for everybody, but especially for people from public housing development. So we want to say thank you to Congressman Lynch. Thank you to our residents in South Boston and Dorchester for their important work. And let's continue working together. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out. First, I want to thank Steve Lynch for always having your feet on the ground, and what also Senator Markey, Senator Warren. What Senator Markey didn't mention is when Steve went to Congress, he said to us, his workers, when I go to Congress, you're going to Congress. So he bought 400 of his closest friends when he was sworn in that night. It was a great night. Thank you for it, a memory that's going to last forever. And he talked about skating right over there. I skated there. I skated at Moakley Park when it was frozen. Swam right out there. And one of the things that's going on in this whole area, welcome to Columbia Point, by the way, is the public-private partnerships that are happening with UMass and the Accordia development that's going on. It's been the catalyst to get this ball moving. This side over here will raise up by 25 feet to help us on this side. The resiliency berm will be here. We have Kosciuszko Circle in the middle of it all. These discussions are all about resiliency and also transportation. I grew up in the neighborhood right across, and we were trapped by the train tracks, the highway, Kosciuszko Circle, and hopefully by the time I die, we're going to be able to address some of those things. But the importance in the collaboration that's happened here, I think that's the most important part. The catalyst that was the Dorchester Bay and UMass over here to get us all talking about the resiliency, to get us talking about transportation, and how can we connect these neighborhoods that are as close to any place to the water, but we haven't been able to safely get here. So I'm here. I'm grateful that we're all here. I'm grateful that we're talking, and I'm grateful that we have the money for the resiliency, and hopefully some money coming in for transportation also. But just great times coming to Columbia Point, coming to South Boston, coming to Dorchester. This is a sort of a crossroads where we all meet and we all use Carson Beach as a way to cool off in the summer. Again, thank you everybody for being here, and most importantly, thank you for the collaboration.
Thank you. My name is City Councilor at Large Michael Flaherty. I was actually born in the Old Harbor Projects, which is down Mary Ellen McCormick, and grew up playing Little League and Babe Ruth at Moakley Park. My kids played soccer in Pop Warner, so I'm very familiar with the park, and all excited to talk about those improvements. And if you think about the late, great Congressman Joe Moakley, who I served with. I know Congressman Lynch served with. I know Senator Markey had the privilege of serving with. Nobody brought resources and funding back to Boston better than Joe, and to realize that Congressman Lynch stepped right into those shoes and continues to scratch and claw and do what he can down in D.C. to make sure that this district, in partnership with Senator Warren and Senator Markey and under the leadership of Mayor Wu, we're going to be in great shape, I think, moving forward as we fight climate change. And if you think about a lot of Boston's success stories, they're a direct result of partnerships, both city, state, and the federal government, but also partnerships from Mass Water and Sewer. I see Fred Lasky here, Kathy Abbott, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. Lots of folks that day in and day out, while we're at City Hall or the State House or down at the Capitol down in Washington, folks that their daily lives are to focus on these issues, to keep us informed and to tell us where those needs are, working with our community here in South Boston and our neighbors in Dorchester. This is going to be a great thing for many years to come. And as we continue to tackle the climate change issues that Senator Markey had outlined, we know that we've got folks like Steve Lynch at Beacon Hill. We have Mayor Wu at City Hall. We've got Senator Nick Collins and David Beal up at the State House, and myself, Ed Flynn, and Frankie Baker at City Hall, all working together in partnership on behalf of the community with all of the nonprofits and the other organizations that make this their focal point every single day. So thank you, obviously, Kathy, Fred, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, so many other folks here that made this opportunity possible. We'll continue to go to work for you. Let us know how we can be most helpful moving forward. But again, I just want to thank our Congressman Lynch, and both of our senators, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and our mayor, for sort of putting this thing together. We're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, and know that you have a very listening and helpful and hopeful ear at City Hall as we continue to move forward together. Thank you all for your time and attention. I look forward to the groundbreaking and all the improvements at Moakley Park in the years to come. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Beal. I have the honor of representing this community at the Massachusetts House of Representatives. Thank you for being with us today. Going to repeat a lot of what my colleagues have already said. We don't get here today without collaboration. Collaboration between federal partners led by Congressman Lynch, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, collaboration with our city officials, Mayor Wu, Councilors Flynn, Flaherty, Baker, and efforts with the state, working in partnership with DCR. We're in DCR property right now, working with Senator Collins. One thing that I've learned representing this community, living in this community, is that South Boston's a peninsula and Dorchester's a coastal community. We're surrounded by water. We've seen the need for resiliency firsthand, and just very proud to have the partnership support of our partners at all levels of government. Councilor Baker alluded to having private partnerships, which is equally important. The only way we're going to get things done is by working together, public, private, nonprofits. I know Boston Harbor Now is here. They've been tremendous partners as we've been having these conversations. And one thing I think we've learned over the last 2 years is the importance of our parks, the importance of our beaches. Through the efforts of our governments, we have some of the cleanest beaches here in South Boston and in Dorchester, and these investments will ensure that our parks and our beaches will be there for generations to come. So thank you for being here today. I know we're at the start of a conversation on how we can get this across the finish line. Look forward to being a part of that with the community. I know Carol Sullivan's here on behalf of the tenants who were driving this as well. So thank you again for being here, and look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you so much. So next we'll hear from our partners in various state agencies, Director Fred Lasky of the MWRA, and then Director Sarah White of DCR, and then we'll close it out with the star of the program, Ms. Carol Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. I guess I'd like to just say ditto. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Senator. No, we sit here on a beautiful day, and the weather's cooperated, and we're looking behind us at an incredible asset in the beach and the park, and it wasn't easy to get here. And just as a little bit of background, the idea was to build a massive pump station down the other end of the beach, and when the rain would come, we'd fire up this big fuel pump station, the second largest in New England, and we'd pump all the sewage somewhere else, and it would be great, except the environmental side of it. Second largest pump station in New England. So we're going back and forth. It was very contentious with the neighbors. The council remembers that well. And yet we were holding the line. We're going to build a pump station. It's in the overall the best way. and I got an invitation to go to Congressman Lynch's office. And I went up there, and there's Nick sitting there, he probably remembers, and Dan Ryan. The congressman and I had a nice conversation, and I get back to the office, and they said, well, how did it go? I said, well, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. We're going to Plan B. What's Plan B? I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And that Plan B was the massive storage tunnel down along the beach here that's led to the cleanest urban beaches in the country. And you know, and it was a collaborative effort. Federal, state, local, regional, and then the neighbors were involved from the beginning. And he said, by the way, they said, well, was there anything else? I said, yeah, he wants a dog park. He's tired of seeing dogs on the beach. So, right, you have your dog park right there. And it all worked out. And I thank you all for your support here today. And we're glad that we're included in this. Obviously, we have some very important assets that we've constructed, the storage tunnel, the ventilation, the headworks. And it's critically important that we be involved, and we are. And I thank you all for that. And again, I congratulate everyone else. And here's my Ed Markey story, and then I'll shut up. He had just become elected as U.S. Senator, and the congressman's office was in Medford Square. I live in Medford. My wife and I walk the dog every night. He had gotten elected. The next night, I walked by Colleen's ice cream store, and there he is with a big thing of ice cream, basking in the glow. And I said, this guy's all right. He comes over to Medford, eats our ice cream, and represents us well. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. I'll be brief because most of my remarks were covered by everyone else. This is truly an amazing partnership. The Department of Conservation and Recreation is really proud to be a partner in this initiative with the City of Boston and our federal delegation. I feel very fortunate to work for the Baker-Polito administration that really puts environmental issues at the real heart of everything that we do. The Department of Conservation and Recreation just established an Office of Climate Resilience where I work, and we're able to really fully participate in these types of climate change initiatives across the city of Boston and beyond. Under Mayor Wu's leadership, we're really excited to begin to invest in this area and make some partnerships along the way. So I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you. Enjoy the park while you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Carol Sullivan is the leader of the Mary Ellen McCormick Tenant Task Force. We're so grateful for her leadership, and it's not just on small projects like this one. Not too long ago, Carol and the governor and the congressman and fellow colleagues and I were on a walk of the housing development and the many, many changes that are needed there. Again, it will be a city, state, and federal partnership, and so we're so grateful for her leadership and that all the many voices that she represents.
Well, all I can say is, wow, standing here with such a group of people, and I am so honored. Good morning. My name is Carol Sullivan, and I'm a tenant of the Mary Ellen McCormick Development and Executive Director of the Mary Ellen McCormick Task Force. The Mary Ellen McCormick Public Housing Development is owned by the Boston Housing Authority, built in the 1930s, and a community of 1,016 deeply affordable housing units that for generations many have called their home and located directly across from Moakley Park. Parts of the Mary Ellen McCormick development are in a flood zone. Several years ago, many of us, including myself, living on Old Colony Ave, were affected by a storm surge that flooded our basements, causing many units to be infested with little flies that caused flooding for several weeks. We had to plug our drains and our overflow and the sinks and tubs until the basements could be dried out, which affected our quality of life. Today's earmark announcement is very exciting as Mary Ellen McCormick and Moakley Park each undergo significant change, adapting for the impacts of climate change while advancing the city's goals for mixed income housing and resiliency. The Boston Housing Authority and Mary Ellen McCormick Task Force has partnered with Wind Development to redevelop the 1,016 units and preserve affordability. The new mixed income community also increases density to achieve this public purpose while creating modern affordable homes for individuals and families. The new development will include many resilient and sustainable measures, including designing all residential buildings to be the highest of the highest environmental standards, passive house certification for energy efficiency, reducing the building's ecological footprint, and increase our quality of life, preserving where possible existing mature trees, integrating a significant number of new native adapted trees, shrubs, and perennial plantings. The buildings and site are designed to reduce local heat island effects, raising site roadways, building entrances above the flood elevation projection for the year 2070, and last but not least, creating open spaces and infrastructure that will prevent flooding. This significant private investment will ensure that current and future homes for thousands of Bostonians from South Boston to Roxbury are protected while creating open spaces for all to enjoy regardless of age, background, or income. I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today about this critical endeavor. Thank you.
Questions on this project for any of our speakers?
Tell me a little bit more about how this is going to look for climate resiliency. What makes this different from a regular old-fashioned park?
We are right on the edge, as you see, and that means that on a beautiful sunny day like this, it could be a place where you can jog right along the water, or even more and more frequently, even on beautiful sunny days when high tide hits at just the right time, the flooding can spill over into our communities and in a stormy situation all the way potentially in the future into Roxbury. And so there will be some areas of this park where the green space will be built up as a little bit of a barrier to block the water. There will be other efforts to absorb the water, and overall it's will be further designed with the community's voices front and center in terms of how to preserve and enhance the existing uses that are already here, the multifaceted recreational uses, but with that key core component of protection from flooding and direct absorption and mitigation of climate change.
Where things stand in the overall, broader Moakley Park effort to improve the park that's ongoing?
In terms of sorry, can you be more specific, Sean?
Yeah, there have been studies about what to do next with Moakley Park, so where are those at this point?
Yeah, so the beyond this $2 million investment that we put to use immediately, there is a multi-million-dollar investment that the city is looking to secure funding for and move forward on that will include the entire length of this area and making sure that the improvements to play facilities and family spaces, universal accessibility are all included. Does anyone else want to comment on sort of future of the park? And come to the mic, Frank.
Yeah, they're basically, we're looking for money for it, Sean. We've gone through design, but it's not just Moakley Park.
They won't hear you.
Sorry. It's not just Moakley Park, Sean. It's Accordia all the way over. It all connects. This is the berm or what we're looking at today is just going to be the first thing. But Moakley's a pretty heavy lift. It's $250 million. I would envision the city will be there, Accordia will be there, and different partners around here will be there for us to be able to pay for it.
Just one thing. Yeah. So if you notice, the seawall ends down there. I think that the thinking back in the day was protect the residential homes that are along the water there. And so the seawall stops right there at the beginning of Babe Ruth Park Drive. And so this is a big gap. I think back in the day they thought, okay, the park is there and, it doesn't need to necessarily be protected. But now we're seeing storms with more regularity and more severity, to quite frankly. And so it's actually, as Carol Sullivan mentioned, it's impacting the housing development right behind there. We're making a huge investment there. Like I said, $750 million in those two developments. Incidentally, Joe Moakley also lived at Mary Ellen McCormick. So we need to fill that gap, but we also need to, as Frank Baker mentioned, go all the way over to the other side of Columbia Point with the Accordia project, and they're making a huge investment as well. So the idea is to try to maintain access to the beach, maintain access to the park, but do it in a way that, you know, we implement design features that are also a barrier to encroachment during those severe weather storms, weather events, you know.
Does the plan include shutting down Bay Boulevard, making it pedestrian?
I don't have details on that, and I'm sure the community will have plenty of thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think for more to come on the specific design details after a specific community process and getting all the components in order.
You know, I had actually had a question, somewhat for the answer as well for the federal folks, but it's regarding the Supreme Court and the fight against climate change. The Supreme Court is now considering a case and will rule on a case regarding the EPA and the regulation of greenhouse gases. You know, it's concerned that they'll strip the EPA of its ability to regulate that. And I guess I'd ask, you know, some reaction from the folks in Washington, your opponents, Madam Mayor, if you'd like as well, to that. And also, the court itself, does it sort of, given its decisions that it's made, is it a concern as we move forward trying to fight climate change?
I'll start. We have an out-of-control Supreme Court. They have torched their own credibility. And climate is just the next item up where this court may prove that it's not about law, it's about politics. That means that we're going to have to double down our efforts at the congressional level on any number of issues, from road to voting rights to climate. The way we do that is that we focus on the election in November. We focus on local elections. We have a gubernatorial race here. It matters who gets elected governor. And I just want to say we have Maura Healey running against a Trump-endorsed person who would take this state in the wrong direction. It also matters at the federal level. We got 2 more Democratic senators who are willing to get rid of the filibuster and double down on the issues that matter and are urgent for the American people, from road to climate. Then we can make real change. But this is a moment when we can't overstate just how much is at risk. The United States Supreme Court is out of control, and Congress needs to react quickly. Ed?
Yeah, thank you. The most important environmental decision in the history of the United States was rendered by the Supreme Court in April of 2007. That case was Massachusetts versus the EPA. Massachusetts had sued, arguing that the coastline of our state had been dangerously eroding because of greenhouse gases, and yet the EPA was doing nothing about it. The decision was a 5-4 decision, and it said to the EPA that they had a responsibility to make a determination as to whether or not this coastline was endangered, and if they determined that it was, and it was related to greenhouse gases, then they had a responsibility to do something about it. That decision was ultimately made by the Obama administration, and that's what gave them the power to increase fuel economy standards of the vehicles we drive and to take other actions to reduce greenhouse gases.
Do you think those efforts are in jeopardy now?
The case which is pending right now before the Supreme Court is West Virginia versus the EPA. This Supreme Court right now is deciding what the EPA can do to reduce greenhouse gases. And unfortunately, they're disciples of Justice Scalia. Justice Scalia, in his dissent in Massachusetts versus EPA, said, what's next? Flatulence from cows? Just showing his disdain and the minority disdain in that decision for any action taken in order to reduce greenhouse gases and its impact upon the coastline of Massachusetts, but upon the well-being of the people of the United States. So This decision which they're about to render could very easily cripple the EPA's ability to promulgate regulations to reduce greenhouse gases, but to protect, in general, the environment in our country by saying that in the absence of a specific law passed by Congress to specifically talk about any particular problem, the EPA cannot act. The problem with that is that it would have tremendous repercussions across all health care, safety, regulations across the entire spectrum of issues that regulatory agencies in American history have put on the books in order to protect public health and safety. So I agree with Senator Warren. We need to repeal the filibuster so that we can expand the Supreme Court to reclaim the 2 stolen seats on a now illegitimate court, which are stealing the rights of American people. We need to repeal the filibuster so we can pass strong abortion protections, that we can pass strong gun safety laws, that we can pass strong environmental laws, that we can pass laws which the American people want to see on the books. We're at a critical turning point in American history, and I can't agree more strongly with Senator Warren that it's time for Congress to stand up and to act and to reclaim our ability to respond to an out-of-control, irresponsible, illegitimate Supreme Court.
Let me just follow up, and I agree with my colleagues. If you read the recent Supreme Court case in Dobbs v. Jackson, one of the troubling aspects of this is that the court, in Judge Alito's majority opinion, held that because a fundamental right was not enumerated and extended to the states back in 1868 when the Fourth Amendment was adopted, that it does not have the legitimacy to exist right now. And so now they've undermined what was a broad-based right recognized by the Supreme Court that extended to every American. Now they've diced it up by state so that some women no longer have that right. Some people don't enjoy that secure right of privacy under the Supreme Court's view right now. If you apply that reasoning to the West Virginia case, my fear is that they will undermine the national spectrum of environmental justice, that they will dice it up, just as they have done in the reproductive rights case, and say that each state has the right to regulate the environment within their borders. That does not work. That undermines any meaningful look. The climate change challenge is a global challenge, and if they force us or take the power of the EPA to do their work on a national and on a global scale, they're causing great damage to our efforts that we're here to address today under what would be a new constitutional scheme. So that's my great fear, that they're going to continue down this same road in the same way to undermine our ability to provide rights to people on a national basis, but also to provide protections for our environment on a national and a global scale.
We have had too many of these announcements and conversations recently about how to push back against the Supreme Court. They have come for states who have enacted their own common sense gun regulations that are working, that protect our community members. They have come for women and everyone across this country impacted by reproductive justice and bodily autonomy. And they seem poised to come for the hard-fought and won protections for maybe the most important investment we can make in our planet and in our children's future. We are blessed and so lucky in Massachusetts to have this federal delegation fighting for us and taking every possible step, laying out the path to make a difference in this moment at the federal level. But I will say at the city level, at the state level, I know I speak on behalf of my colleagues here today, that we are ready and we are poised to be that backstop. And we have been here before as a Commonwealth. Massachusetts, from revolution to abolition to marriage equality, has always stood up, even when the rest of the country was not ready or was not willing. And each of those instances, when we have stepped forward to provide that fundamental recognition that every single person is valued, should be safe, should be welcomed, and should be home, protected here, that has an impact in all of our shared prosperity, our Commonwealth for generations to come. Right? When we became the state leading the charge for abolition, we became home to a thriving economy and workers and families who built their homes here. And just as right now, when people in different states all across the country are now looking at the erosion of federally protected rights and now set to the whims of individual states' politics, not feeling at home maybe in other places, Boston and Massachusetts can be home for everyone. We will ensure that this is a home for everyone and that we are a city that stands up for all of our rights and all of our family members to be counted and to have everything that they deserve. Okay, thank you everyone for being here.